Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us on This Week in Milwaukee Rising with Technically. I'm Sorrina Beecher, the lead reporter for the region, and every week we feature an individual or group that is shaping Milwaukee's economic landscape and highlighting solutions to help build a more equitable and inclusive future. So I'm so excited because this week we're talking with local angel investor Teresa Esser, managing director, community banking at social impact startup Rallius, which is a part of ESG Financial Group. And we are going to learn more about her work to launch an affordable housing pilot and other ways to steer capital for good. So I'm super excited for this conversation. Welcome, Teresa. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sorrina.
And it's really interesting because you actually got your start in book publishing. How did you transition to VC?
Thank you. That's a great question. Yep. I started in book publishing and I was able to publish a book called The Venture Cafe, Secrets, Strategies, Stories from America's High-Tech Entrepreneurs. The goal of that book was to explain how venture capitalists made decisions. So I went around Boston. I'm from here. I'm from Waukesha. I went to college out on the East Coast. I went to MIT. A lot of people were starting companies. They were raising venture capital, and I wanted to know why. And I wanted to know what some people were doing right, why some venture capitalists were giving money, investing money in some entrepreneurs, and other entrepreneurs were not receiving the venture capital investment. So I spent years. I spent from 1999, 2000, 2001. The book came out in 2002. I went around Boston. I interviewed venture capitalists. I asked them to tell me their stories. And then I went to a bar on the MIT campus called the Muddy Charles Pub, and I asked entrepreneurs to tell their stories. And in some cases, I asked them to tell their stories however they would. And in some cases, they were anonymous stories. They were very true, very candid stories about the things that happen when you go out on a limb and you take a risk and you try to start a company. And after the book came out in 2002, I felt like I knew a few things. Meanwhile, my husband had started an Ethernet telephone company that had been successful in raising venture capital, and it was successful in being sold, and it delivered money back to its venture capitalists, and it delivered money back to its founders. And I wanted to know why. So that was kind of the basis for the book. After that happened, my husband said that he wanted to do what had been done for him. He wanted to provide other entrepreneurs with some capital in the same way that capital had been provided to him. So he said he wanted to do some angel investing. So I said, okay. And around about that time, Wisconsin was launching its tax credit, providing angel investors with 25% of their money back in a tax credit if they would take a risk on someone else's business. So I persuaded him to leave Cambridge, Massachusetts, and move back here to Wisconsin. He took over the Silicon Pastures Angel Investment Network. And then we were starting a family. I was a mother, and we decided that perhaps he should go and get a job. He went to work for Metavante in their corporate development department, learning how companies buy startups. And I was partly a stay-at-home mom, and I partly ran the angel investment network, Silicon Pastures. So Silicon Pastures Angel Investment Network was a great, great fun thing to do, and I ran that from 2006 until 2020.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because I know in our earlier conversation you were kind of talking about what it was like to be, in the 90s when VC was like a very exciting space to be in. Not to say it isn't now, but it was really like taking off, and there wasn't a whole lot of women in the space. What were some of the challenges that you either, observed while you were kind of getting your feet wet in that area, or what other challenges did other women face? What other things did you see or kind of acknowledge during that time?
Right. So you need to kind of zoom out and think about what venture capital is, what private equity is, what angel investing is. And the whole thing is, it is somebody decides that they want to take a risk and they want to invest in someone else's business. So somebody needs to start out with some money in the beginning, and then they need to find other people whom they trust. So how do you decide whom to trust? And in most cases in life in general, it's money stays in a family. If a person has some money, they might give the money to their children, to their grandchildren. So it goes down the generational line. And so, the world of venture capital started with these sort of family offices. Family offices meaning maybe the one generational person made some money, then they set up their child, or they start taking risks on making small investments in other people's businesses.
Mhm.
And that happens a lot more frequently with men than with women. In those days, I once went to a conference and I said, I would like to, they had a conference, they had the venture capital side and then the philanthropic side. And I showed up and they're like, well, you're female, so you're going to go to the philanthropic side, right? And I was like, well, no, I want to go to the venture capital side. They're like, well, that side's oversubscribed. But there are many, many women who somehow, when women get some wealth, they tend to go to these philanthropic events. And that always kind of puzzled me. Why are people more comfortable making a charitable donation where they're 100% guaranteed to not get any money back, except maybe a tax write-off? Whereas if you make the same investment, if you invest the same amount in venture capital or angel investing, in Wisconsin, you might get a tax credit. So you might still get 25% of your money back, which is not unlike, a tax deduction. But you could also get a lot more of your money back. Maybe you could double your money. Maybe you could triple your money. Maybe you could get 20 times the return, and you like famous investor George Mosier said, you can only lose 1 times your money, but you can get 20 times your money back or more. So, anyway, you asked about the specific challenges that women face. I mean, this is not a regulated industry. This is not like the public school system where there's this notion of fairness. Rules don't apply when it's private equity, when it's people doing their own things with their own money, in the same way that if you wanted to start a lemonade stand, no one would come up to you and say, let's look at your workforce. Are you really achieving, diversity and inclusion goals in your lemonade stand? I mean, you can do what you want with your own money when it's in your bank account and it's your money. So anyone who has wealth, they can do what they want. And, typically they just get together with their friends. It was called country club investing. So they got together with their friends. Maybe they took a risk. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they, and so I would always go out and try to recruit women angel investors to come and be a member of my network. But there wasn't a lot of, there weren't a lot of role models. There weren't a lot of people didn't have a lot of experience taking these risks. And for whatever reason, they were more comfortable with philanthropy for much of it. But things have changed in the last few years. So that's really a good sign.
Yeah. And I actually want to take a step back because you shared something with me that I thought was so interesting. When you were working in book publishing, you came to learn this concept called follow the money. Can you talk to our viewers a little bit about that and how that sort of shaped the way that you wanted to be in this world, in the world of VC?
Sure. So I worked for a company called Kluwer Academic Publishers. It's a Dutch publishing firm, and I worked in Norwell, Massachusetts. So we were the American outpost of a Dutch, conglomerate. And they said, okay, so I was running the environmental science, technology, and human health book publishing program. And so my job was to identify areas of science in environmental science, technology, and human health that would be interesting to academics, specifically graduate students and professors, several years down the road. So we had to, we looked to see where the United States government was providing grants for principal investigators. So the United States government provides grants. They provide the grants to universities. Researchers compete for these grants, and there are grant-making entities like the National Institute of Health, like different government organizations. And so you look and say, who is the principal investigator on this grant? Who's getting the money to start doing research? And then you go and follow them and say, do you think you might want to turn your research into a research monograph, which is also known as a book, or would you like to start a new academic journal? So between 1995, when I graduated from college, in 1998, when I left to launch my book proposal, I was traveling around to these research universities throughout the United States. And so, I was following the money. Where are these grants going to go so that I could come and get a research monograph out of it or a journal article out of it later? And while that was happening in 1998, I noticed that all this money was going into venture capital. Like they call it, the rivers were starting to flow a lot faster. And so I said, oh, I bet people would pay $20, $25, $25.99, $30 for to get the answer to that question, how venture capitalists decide who to invest in. If you're going for $1 million, $2 million, it's definitely worth buying my book to see if I have any secrets for you. And so that was where the title came from, and that was how I justified doing that.
That's great. And I do want to talk a little bit about your work with Silicone Pastures. You spent many years doing this work. Is there anything that you're proud of? Is there anything that you can talk to us that you're the most proud of in your VC career? I know you invested in a lot of upstarts. You were one of those people that was willing to take those risks, which in a conservative environment like Wisconsin is not always easy to find. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I'm proud of some of the companies that I invested in that did well, and I'm proud of some of the companies that I'm in right now that are doing well. So one success we had was called Clearant, and George Mosier got a 20 times return on Clearant. Some other people took a cash out a little bit earlier and got 8 times their money. And I'm proud of being in Blue Line Battery right now, and I'm proud of being in Front Desk right now. The portfolio is listed on the siliconpastures.com website. So I'm proud that we took these risks, and I'm proud that we helped to set people up, because it's kind of a vote of confidence for an entrepreneur. At the angel level, you raise money from the local community, and then the people from outside who have larger funds, like they've got millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. They'll ask the entrepreneur, "Well, did you raise any money from the local community?" And so you pretty much have to be able to say, "Yes, the local community knows me," and everyone sort of follows and piggybacks on other people's due diligence. So, and I'm proud of the the support that I've provided to entrepreneurs. Sometimes they need emotional support, and they need
Mhm.
a phone call. They need hard questions to be asked on Friday so they can think about it over the weekend and come back with a better answer on Monday.
Sure, sure. That's important. Um, it is interesting though, when we were talking again earlier, that like a lot of people, the year 2020 was a period of reflection. It was a period of change. And you kind of began questioning your impact following the murder of George Floyd and the civil unrest. What sort of changed for you during that time? What were some things that came to light or made you want to sort of pivot your direction?
Thank you. Great question. Well, a lot of things happened. Some things were external. Some things were, I was told, we were told we were going to be safer at home. So I had been running these angel meetings, running these angel dinners where we got as many people as we could get together in one room, and then everybody had to stay home. And then we learned how to do a hybrid meeting. And then with the George Floyd protests, and my friend Gita Senkapanavar, my college apartment mate, called and said, Teresa, I'm a brown woman, and it's so hard to go out there in the world of white men, and raise a venture capital fund and pretend like it doesn't bother me. I want to change the way that money flows. I want to provide support, more support for marginalized communities, more support for women and minority entrepreneurs. And then we started to talk about it, and I'd already known this, but then I started to research the numbers. At the time, women entrepreneurs were getting 2% of the venture capital, and minority entrepreneurs were getting 1% of the venture capital. And you look at Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is, I believe, a majority minority city by now. And I was like, I had always been saying, why aren't more people investing in Milwaukee? I even started a Rotary Club committee called Invest in Milwaukee. And in order to change the way that money was flowing, such that more money would flow to Milwaukee, we had to really look at all the barriers, and we had to be intentional and ask more questions. And basically, that's why we set up this fintech, this social impact fintech, so we could be more intentional. And so we could have our tagline: where you put your money matters. It matters where you put your money. Don't just put your money anywhere. Don't just leave your money in a bank account unless you know what your bank is doing with your money when you put it in the bank account. So that was the whole intentionality, and that was the basis for how this got started.
And did that start to change the way that you also viewed economic investment as a whole? I mean, you were in that space, you were already kind of doing your own, where you were reaching out to female entrepreneurs or investors, and you were trying to kind of bring everybody into the fold. But did this kind of
Yeah,
ratchet that up?
there was a movement. So it became really obvious with the Black Lives Matter movement that this is something that is very important, and more people want to make sure that their dollars are being used for fairness. And then with the whole, I feel like the climate change awareness increased significantly. And I started to do research on the Rainforest Action Network. I started to really look at what Greenpeace was talking about, what Sierra Club was talking about. I started to look at what banks do with your money when you put your money into a bank. What does the typical bank do? And I started to download some of these presentations, and I started to say, oh my gosh, I don't ask. I have not been asking what happens to my money when I put my money into a bank. Because in many cases, banks will take your dollars, leverage them 10 to 1 in partnership with the US government, and then invest in their loan book. And in many cases, a bank's loan book, they put 40% of the dollars into fossil fuel extraction. And again, it's possible to research this online, validate for yourself, find out for yourself. But a lot of people need an alternative, and they need to be told, they need to wake up, they need to ask questions, and then they need to say, well, what can I do instead? How can I change the way that my money flows? What should I do with this instead of just leaving it somewhere where I don't have to think about it, thinking that it's low risk? And so that was the motivator. That was the very strong wake up. And I said, okay, we really need to move things around. Then when I started to think about housing, I started to think about, the fact that many people in Milwaukee do not own houses. Many people in Milwaukee are renting. When you rent a house, when you rent for a long period of time, you're giving money to your landlord. The landlord is making a profit, hopefully every month. But economic empowerment and generational wealth is tied to housing. So that kind of came around full circle.
Yeah, and you're actually, as part of Rallius, which is under ESG Financial, you're actually launching an affordable housing pilot. Do you mind sharing with our viewers a little bit more about what your grand vision is there?
Yes, absolutely. So we did a lot of research, and we realized that the $200,000 level is, to get a house built, to get a 3-bedroom house built, 1.5 bathrooms, it costs about $200,000 to get that house built. And $200,000 is also kind of a target of affordability for a lot of people. Like their stretch goal, their dream goal of what they can afford, with some philanthropic assistance, could be around $200,000.
Mhm.
So we said, I wonder if we can do this. I wonder if we can make the two ends work. Can we connect this? What needs to be done? How can we make this work? And can we create houses that are environmentally responsible? And can we help make it easier and more affordable for a wider segment of the population to become homeowners? Because if we do that, there are so many studies that say when people own their own homes, their children do better in school. When people own their own homes, they feel more stable. They feel less anxious. That has a positive impact on their mental health. When a neighborhood is filled with homeowners, the neighborhood is more stable. A homeowner is more likely to join a neighborhood trash pickup. They're more likely to report suspicious things that they see, which has a positive impact on safety and security and even traffic. People are more likely to drive more safely in homes that are filled with homeowners. So there are many reasons why homeownership is good. And so I've spent the past kind of year and a half, 2 years trying to figure out what all needs to be done in order to empower more people to own their own homes. What is the ideal minimum product? And I'm challenging assumptions. I am challenging so many assumptions.
Yeah.
And the tagline that I say again and again is, you know what? Do you really need that feature? Because we need to get the majority of people into homes. Really? Do you really need that? Because I don't know if we can afford it, where we is the widest number of people in Milwaukee. And so there's more to come, but it's been really fascinating. Oh, also with the environmental side of it, a lot of people are paying their monthly energy bills, and a lot of people are paying, $200, $250, $200, $300 per month in monthly energy bills. What if the house was more environmentally responsible? What if it was laid out better? What if there were ways to use environmentally responsible building technologies such that the energy bill could be less, such that it would be easier for people to afford the minimum viable home? We would cast a wider net, and that is something that a lot of people care about. Again, for climate change reasons, it's something that's philanthropic, and some people in the federal government are getting behind it, saying, energy efficiency, renewable energy, these are matters of national importance. And I guess we could talk about that all day, but.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. I remember when we were talking about this, and you had mentioned that, something as simple as, and maybe it's not so simple, energy efficiency could be a line of defense when we're looking at global economics and things like that. Just super, super interesting to think about it in that way. I wanted to, we keep seeing this phrase ESG. It's had a little bit more visibility over the past couple of years. Do you mind talking a little bit about ESG and its purpose, and then maybe share a little bit about B Corp, because I understand that it's also under a B Corp structure, and we're also seeing more about B Corps, especially here in Wisconsin, where that is one of our business structures.
Sure. ESG stands for environmentally responsible, social justice, and good corporate governance. So, you take a business and it's sort of like, let's acknowledge, or let's look hard at the business and see if they're doing anything that is not environmentally responsible, or see if they're doing something that is environmentally responsible. And then social justice, look at diversity and inclusion goals, look at is there any part of their supply chain that would be embarrassing if it were to come to light, if everybody knew everything about everything that a business was doing? Are they really? Is it really about social justice all the way down? And then good corporate governance. Look at the board of directors. What kinds of who is on the board of directors? What kinds of things do they talk about at the board level? How do people conduct themselves behind the scenes? These are some of the topics that have come up. And so an ESG company is it's supposed to be good, on all these fronts. And you asked about what is a B Corp. Well, a B Corporation is a new type of company, and they are companies that voluntarily meet the highest standards for social and environmental performance. And so, if you go out and say you're a certified B Corporation, you're volunteering to say we are trying very hard to meet these standards. We're voluntarily doing this. We've allowed ourselves to be scrutinized, and people who are like-minded should do business with us, knowing that we are, we're trying to be socially responsible.
Right. Do you have, just all of the lessons that you have learned since you started working on the ground in BC, now as an angel investor, now working in ESG? Is there a message that you want to share with like Milwaukee's business community, other investors? I know one thing you mentioned was risk. One thing is challenging your assumptions. Was there anything else that you wanted to kind of say to everyone?
The thing I want to say is we do have the resources we need to invest in Milwaukee. I think it's a matter of teaching people how to do it and empowering them and encouraging them to take risks. I believe this is a pivotal time in the history of our city, and we can do a lot better with regard to causing a much larger segment of our population to become homeowners, so that they can invest in themselves, invest in their families, invest in our neighborhoods. That will make the city safer and happier when we have a higher percentage of the city as homeowners. And so that's my personal, my own personal goal. If I was to drive through Milwaukee and the central city, the 20th Street, 21st, 30th, 35th, 40th, if that part of the city was all filled with homeowners, there's so much, that'll be a lot cooler, because it'd be more fun. There would be more businesses, there would be more grocery stores, there'd be more cool cafes, there'd be more artist areas. Things would just get a lot cooler and funkier. And I know that because I lived in Massachusetts when things were improving. And things are very, very interesting and cool. Dollars flow. First the artists move in, dollars flow after that. Okay. But we want people to feel like the people who are living in Milwaukee now, they can benefit from the success of Milwaukee. So that's the thing that I want to leave everybody else with, or anybody who's watching this. What the biggest innovation that I found by talking to neighborhood residents was, we want to make it inclusive. We want to make any investments that occur to be inclusive to neighborhood residents so that everyone can feel like they are part of the solution. And so that is something that I'm not at liberty to talk about today, but believe me, there are going to be opportunities for people to succeed along with whatever ESG's Financial does in the community of Milwaukee. And we're working on it. There are going to be many, there are going to be opportunities. So let's leave it at that.
No, thank you for sharing that. And I am going to just drop the website right here. You guys can learn more information and stay in the loop at www.joinesg.com. And Teresa, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And we look forward to seeing what you're going to do on the horizon. To all of our viewers, the conversation does not have to end right here. So we're actually going to be posting a recap of our conversation on the Technically website, sharing Teresa's story in our next weekly newsletter. To subscribe, all you have to do is, let me find it here, read more at technically/series/Milwaukee. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. And if you want to share more thoughts on the conversation and get in touch with Teresa, you can actually shoot me an email at Milwaukee@technically. Just technically. So sorry, I always want to say .com, Milwaukee@technically. And thanks again for joining us. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.